people that know.
Yeah, it's one person. Hi, Marley.
Hey, girl.
Hey, ladies.
How are
So
you?
nice to see you again. Yeah.
Good. Really good. How are you guys?
Doing well, doing well. These apparently had a really busy day, so we were just discussing that.
Oh, no.
I mean, sure, we're all there, but yeah, Thursdays have gotten just a little challenging. All good. It's all been in a good way. Been having a good day so far. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad we all get to wind down together, so it's going to be fun.
How has your week been? Sorry, Simon, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying we're gonna wait for like 2 more minutes and like let anyone come in, and then we'll start. And honestly, I kind of like hope it's a really small group because it's always nice just like chatting all of us.
Yeah, that was wonderful. I'm so sorry we like ran over time last week. I won't bug you guys
Oh,
that
fine.
often.
No, it was super
Wow.
fun. Like I learned a lot, definitely. It was like really useful.
Simran, I love the fact that you had that agreement like so early on in a relationship. I feel like all women need to be doing that.
No, I keep getting made fun of for it. And it's like, and I think I was talking to my brother about it. Ooh, and someone else is here as well. But yeah, he's always like, that's so random. And I'm like, no, I refuse to feel bad for it. Like, yes, it's weird, but like it worked for me, but also people get it a lot. Hi, Kimmy.
Hey,
How are you doing?
good. How's your day going?
It's going. Oh, also Marley, if you want to like switch your video on, that would be super great. I think we've like mentioned this before. It's just really great seeing everyone's faces.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. I think we can start, and whoever comes in, they come in, and we'll see how it goes. And like I'm really glad it's like a small group, so it'll be fun. So, there were spoilers in that, Hunby. Now people can see who we are before we announce it.
Oh no, how could they? It's not like they know us or anything.
So hi everyone. We're really excited for this week's Credit Power Hour because we're discussing something that's super important to like everyone's life, and also my life personally, which is paying off debt and also credit card debt. It's something that a lot of people find themselves, a situation a lot of people find themselves in. And it's really important to know, one, how to get out of it, and two, how to stay out of it as we go on. But first, intros. And we can use, yeah. So hi everyone, we're Sequin. You know us a little at this point. We're on a mission to get women the credit we deserve. So just get women the best credit scores possible, get them the best savings possible, the best education, everything that's great about the financial world. It's really what Sequin's all about. Right now, we have some great investors and backers. There's Visa, there's Charles Schwab, there's IDEO, and 92% of our cap table is female. So that's amazing. Like it's just really, really rare, and we're very happy about that. And some of you may have heard this already, but really Sequin came about because our founder, Brenda, she used to work at Visa, and she worked on the Sapphire Reserve card. And she built it from the ground up with her team. It was amazing. She worked really hard on it, and then she applied for it, and then she was rejected, which is terrible. And then after she asked for guidance, someone actually led her through the credit education process, and she realized, despite the fact that she'd been working at Visa, she'd been working on this card, she just didn't have the education, and she was never given the education before this to work on building her credit and getting the premier cards that are really needed in the US, especially to build good credit. So, that kind of led to Sequin being born. And here we are now with all of you wonderful, wonderful women, just on our mission and getting there. Yeah, send me next. Okay, so you all know me, you see me on the Slack, you see me here, I'm talking to you right now. I'm Simran. I graduated from Carnegie Mellon in May 2020, so just great time. Loved doing my last semester online. I used to be a former product manager in the edtech space, mostly at startups, and that's just what I love doing. And then I learned about there's something with fintech and startups, which was really interesting to me because finance is just, it's so immediate and it's such a necessary part of our everyday lives, which led me to finding out about Sequin. And then I moved here because, you know, I'm a woman and I have seen firsthand the impact that bad financial knowledge can have on women. And so the mission sounded so interesting, and yeah, here I am. Tanvi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Tanvi. I'm currently doing my MBA at Berkeley Haas, and before this, I was a consultant at Deloitte. Something I've always been passionate about is empowering women economically. I worked in asset management before Deloitte and was just like struck at how easy it was to invest and like how none of the women did. So that translated in just a broader interest in this space. I previously worked at 81 Cents, which focuses on pay equity for women and minorities. And I'm thrilled to be here at Sequin, learning more about credit and talking to all of you.
Cool. Okay, also we are recording the Sequin Credit Power Hour. If you prefer not to be a part of this public recording, please turn off your camera, change your name, and if you have questions, like let us know in the chat and we'll read them out for you. If you are totally okay with this, then please keep your camera, please keep your video on. We just love seeing everyone's faces and it just gives it a nice touch. So, oh cool, everyone's on, amazing. Okay, so you all should have received the Thursday texts, and that is because it is Thursday. It is a day before we have our payoffs. So tomorrow, let's all go into the app, make use of those wonderful, wonderful surprises that you know, we're adding to the app recently. And yeah, 9 a.m. That's when we pay off and just keep crushing our credit goals. And don't forget to track your credit score also. So that's housekeeping. Okay, now getting to what session is actually really, really about. The first thing is, you know, as we mentioned before, this is all about paying off debt, but debt really isn't that simple. And what we'll be covering is just all the types of situations you can find yourself in. So the first thing we'll cover is types of debt. The second is credit card debt. We'll also be discussing resources, techniques, and like tools to help pay off debt because there's just so many of them and it's very easy to drown. So we've made a list and, you know, we'll just get it to you in the most simplest and best way possible. And of course, as usual, we have time at the end for Q&A. So that's it. Cool. Okay, before we get started with types of debt, there are some things we need to discuss. Debt does not affect everyone equally. It does not seem like a very obvious fact. That's why when we were doing the research, we were pretty shocked to find this out too. Women carry 2 times credit card debt compared to men. And this number is mostly concentrated for women who are on the younger side and the men who are, oh, hey, one more person is here. We'll wait for her to enter. Hi, Jen.
That's Jen.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Jen, welcome.
We just got started, so good timing. So most of the numbers we see are for women between the ages of 18 to 24 and 55 to 56, whereas 33 to 36% of men in those age ranges carry credit card debt. 63 to 66% of women carry credit card debt, which is a huge, huge difference. And it's not just money. The problem is that there's a lot of emotional impact of debt as well. And a lot of divorces, in fact, over 1/3 of divorces state finances as the main reason because it's so easy for resentment to build up when financial security just isn't present. Aside from divorces, there's also other areas of your life where finances impact you strongly. The first one is severe anxiety. It's been seen that 30% of people with high debt report severe anxiety. There's also reports of people with high debt reporting severe depression. So those 2 things are pretty linked. Another area is that debt is taboo. People don't really like talking about it. It's almost like a sense of shame. 85% of people are hesitant to talk about credit card debt. Unfortunately, what ends up happening with this is that they want to pretend like they're living a debt, that they have no debt. So they try to live life. and show off to other people like, oh yeah, we don't have debt, we're all cool. Which means that they end up spending more, just like they would as if they have no debt, which means they get into more debt, and it's really just a really vicious cycle. And I think it's just really important to talk about debt and make sure it's not something to be ashamed about. It's just a situation most of us find ourselves in at some point or another. So that is that. Does anyone have any questions so far? I'm gonna take that as a no. But if you do, please type it in the chat. In the meantime, just I'm gonna put out a poll, and the question over here is, have you paid off or are currently paying off any debt? I can vote on this, but I can just answer right now, yes, I am. Wow, we're pretty evenly split. Okay, so 60% of us are paying off debt or have paid off debt, and 40% of us are not paying off debt or are just haven't paid off debt, which is, yeah, which is like a good split to have. Cool. I am going to stop talking now, and you can stop hearing my voice. Tanvi, do you want to take over?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I want to call out before we really get into it is that, you know, debt is so personal and so emotional, and we completely understand that. So I am going to pause for questions and ask folks to share, but you know, we like to call on people and get folks talking, but I'm not going to do that this time around. So really just share as much as you're comfortable and as much as you want to. I think we benefit so much from hearing everyone's perspectives, but we know debt is kind of a loaded topic, so we understand that. And before we get into the other piece I wanted to call out was, you know, women have so much more credit card debt, but when we were searching for images for this deck, I have to tell you, I had the hardest time finding like these cartoon images that showed women. It was always these cartoon men characters. And it was so, I had to literally type in like credit card debt women to find pictures. So that just blew my mind that women carry more debt. And yet even in how we represent debt and like articles and pictures, it's portrayed as something associated with men. Not that you necessarily want to be associated with debt, but I just thought that was kind of crazy. Along those lines, you know, something at Sequin we really care about is just sharing the hidden costs to being a woman, because it's pretty expansive. You have the pink tax, you have student debt, caregivers, you know, the wage gap, the credit score gap, higher healthcare costs, you know, not as much retirement, higher mortgage rates, and lower ownership. It kind of is so cyclical. So I wanted to just call that out here and say, you know, the biggest, we don't have credit card debt called out here, but there is a huge disparity in student debt, where women have 15% more debt than men for a bachelor's degree. And just to like call out again that it impacts every part of our life, and this is just more of awareness, and we're in the right place talking about it and getting educated and figuring out what to do about it. Okay, so really quick, I'm just gonna go over types of debt. And there's two frameworks, if you will, for how to think about debt. You have, on one hand, secured versus unsecured debt. Secured debt means your loan is based on collateral. So think of like a secured credit card, mortgages where, you know, the collateral is your house, auto loans where the collateral is your car. And you pay this off in a set of monthly installments. And if you can't pay it off, you know, the issuing entity kind of seizes your house or your auto loan. I don't think that's how it works with secured cards, or it kind of does. You just don't get back the money that you put down. So that is secured debt. And unsecured debt is issued based on, you know, the faith the issuer has that the borrower will repay, which is usually your credit score. And, you know, you pay it off by paying a minimum payment every month. And good examples of this are student loans or utility bills and credit cards. So women are more likely to pay the minimum, at least when it comes to credit cards, which is an avoidable credit mistake, as we like to say. But really, the goal here is secured versus unsecured. Another way to think about debt is revolving and installment credit. And if you guys pull your credit report, it'll actually break down your loans like in this way. So revolving debt means that you can regularly borrow up to a certain limit. So a credit card is the best example of revolving debt. You can borrow up to a limit and you have to keep making monthly payments and pay it off. So you can't borrow above that, you can only borrow up to that. You also have something called a home equity line of credit, which is basically doing the same thing, but the value that you could borrow up to is the value of your house. On the other hand, you have installment credit, which is a fixed lump sum loan that has a predetermined end date and set payments. So mortgage, auto loan, student loans, personal loans, all of that. So I know this just sounds like a lot of words, but hopefully this will help put it together because they do intersect. So a credit card, for example, is a form of unsecured revolving debt, whereas a student loan, a medical bill, unsecured installment debt, right? So both of these don't have an underlying asset that is backing your loan, but they're paid off in different ways. Does that make sense? Thumbs up? Okay. So similarly, for a secured form of debt, revolving is a secured credit card, a credit line, a home equity line of credit. So it's revolving debt and you have collateral that backs it. Whereas a mortgage or an auto loan is installment debt. Again, it's secured, you have collateral backing it, but you're just paying it off in a different way. So a lot of this is just semantics, but we wanted to just call this out to be clear. And revolving installment is called out in your credit report. So hopefully next time you see it, you'll have a better understanding. I'll just pause here. Are there any questions on the types of debt? Okay. And at least for me, it was helpful to see it in this structure because I'd always heard these terms, but I'd never really thought through what they meant or how they were classified. And knowing these things is really important because when it comes to paying off your debt, the types of debt obviously make a difference. So wanted to start with that. And from here, we'll get into credit card debt specifically. So let's say you are in credit card debt, which is fine. It is a manageable situation. Just some basic steps to level set what to do. So the first piece is to review your credit report. And we had a power hour on this, but the goal here is number one, just make sure all the debt that you have on the report is yours. And I know it sounds crazy. How could it not be yours? But 20% of credit reports have an error, and you would not believe some of the horror stories of other people's debt on someone's credit report that has really had bad impacts on their credit score. So check that. And moreover, if you're concerned you don't have a gauge of all of the debt you have, your credit report will list it out so you will know all of the money you owe to your creditors. So this is just a CYA step to make sure all looks good. Now, when it comes to credit card debt, I think we all know that it is one of the highest forms of interest. So the longer you carry a balance, the more interest you're paying. NerdWallet actually did a study that if you paid your minimum plus $100 extra on top of that, you would save $2,655 in interest. And this is, stating an assumption of a period of time and in a specific balance. But this is just to show you that it makes such a big difference, even small amounts every payment. Now, this third one might seem a little counterintuitive, but if you've actually been making regular payments and just have a large chunk of debt that you need to pay off, you can call your credit card and ask for a lower interest rate. It's a really basic negotiation, right? You call them and you say, hi, I've been making regular credit card payments for a while, and I'd love to know if it's possible to reduce your credit card interest rate. If they say no, you can always call up, your competitors actually have really competitive rates. I might just take my business there, and you'll usually hopefully get a few percentage points lower. But this is just one of the things that we never think to ask. And the worst they can do is say no, in which case you are in the same position you always were. So you might as well try. And Simran, great point. Yes, this $2,600 is a trip to Europe. You could do a whole week in Europe with that money. I mean, do that instead of paying it to your credit card. And yes, ask for a lower interest rate. I will pause here. Any other questions or any tips that people feel comfortable sharing? And we have kind of more refinancing options after this. So I'll pause here though.
I think Jen has something. Oh, sorry. Did someone? Sorry, Jen, I'll let you take it.
Oh, that's okay. I put it in the chat, but I can say it too. In the vein of checking to make sure that all the debt on your credit report is yours, be super vigilant about checking your statements, especially if you're carrying a balance and you're just like, oh, this number is high because I shared earlier in a power hour, but I think a lot of you are new to me. But I was once I started Sequin beta, I started tracking my expenses also by hand around the same time. And I had lunch out at Chipotle for like $11. And then I saw a charge on my card for $49. And so if I was carrying a balance, like, and I'm like, oh, you know, it is what it is, whatever, like I can't even tell you how many months I never ever looked at my statements. And so it's super important every single month to make sure that those charges are yours, because that's an also really easy way for, like, you know, we've already been talking this evening about how we have fewer resources as women. Like if you're getting, you know, overcharged for something, then that's money that's just coming out of your pocket. So just, I will add that on to just from personal experience.
Yeah.
That is, oh, sorry, Tanvi, please go.
No, go ahead, Simran.
No, I was just gonna say that's really scary. Like a lunch at Chipotle costing nearly $50 is insane. That is, no, Chipotle, I love Chipotle, but it is not worth that much.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes it's just simple human error. Like my roommate went to Whole Foods the other day and she used Apple Pay and they didn't close out her transaction after her bill was done. And so she got charged for her and the person behind her. And she luckily noticed it in the moment and went back and, you know, rectified. But yeah, sometimes just human error, but like, yeah, why should you pay for that? So absolutely. I always check my transactions before making a payment to make sure that I can remember or recall where the money came from. And Marley, I see you have a question. Has anyone tried to dispute something on their credit report and what is the process like? I personally have not. Has anyone else on the call disputed something on their credit report?
Kimmy says no. I think Jen also said no. Yeah, I haven't either, but I've heard from people who have, on again, like a previous power hour. And I think for them, it was a fairly easy process. You make a call, you write an email, and you just let them know, like, no, I did not do this. There is no way this was me. If possible, if you have to, sometimes they ask you for receipts, sometimes they don't. But it's really not a huge hassle, so it's pretty easy. Basically, the rule of thumb is if you're in doubt about anything, dispute it. Again, like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, I actually did, Simran, have a dispute. I didn't dispute anything like super significant, but this most recent go, not prior to starting Sequin and looking at it every week, the last time I checked my credit report, there were some addresses that didn't belong to me. And I know sometimes like the banks use those questions. And so that really freaks me out if it's an address that's not mine. And so on the credit bureau's website, they actually have a link. And I think some things you have to do via mail if they don't let you upload documentation. But I was trying to get to the person who had a question in the Slack earlier, and then I got distracted back to work stuff and I wasn't able to look it up. But like if you have an account that's not yours or something like that, I think you can just file a dispute online. And then if it tells you that you need to send documentation, I mean, they put the addresses right there because I think I had some thing going on with my credit report for Equifax and actually wasn't able to get it online. I had to mail a request to get it in the mail, and they were super prompt even with that. So it is really easy. And then I think there's a phone number where you can call that they can walk you through it as well.
Oh, thank you, John.
So we gotta all dispute our inaccuracies on our credit report. It is not that scary, and yeah, 20% of reports having errors is just ridiculous. That's 1 in 5, which means that one amongst us likely has an error on the report. So wild. Okay, so back to credit card debt. we just talked through some kind of simple high-level tips, but there are a couple of a little bit more complicated options that, again, as long as you're educated and you know how to use them, can really, really help you. The first piece we're going to talk about is balance transfers. So what a balance transfer is, you're literally transferring your balance from one credit card to another credit card. It is a good option to pay off debt if you have an immediate plan. Like you know, in like a month, you're gonna get all of the money through like your home sale or what have you. Like if you know you're gonna get the money in a quick, short amount of time, that is when to use a balance transfer. And basically what the thinking is, if you have a credit card with high APR, you transfer your balance to a new credit card, which has a lower APR. So a lot of cards have an introductory 0% APR for, the first 12 months, for the first 15 months. So basically you want to transfer your balance to a credit card like that. And you have, a year to pay off your debt without accruing any interest. And again, I want to hammer home, you have to be able to pay off your debt in that introductory APR time period. Otherwise, you're just shifting your debt around between cards and it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, once you transfer your debt to the new card, you stop spending on your original credit card and you're trying to pay off the debt with this new 0% APR card. It sounds too good to be true. And as a result, there are a whole host of caveats that I want to talk through with you. When you're applying for a new credit card, which has this intro 0% APR, number one, not all credit cards have an intro 0% APR offer. So you need to pick the card that does. Some of them are super sneaky, and the 0% APR offer is only for purchases you make on the card and not for balance transfers. So you want to double check that again. You usually also have to pay a balance transfer fee to the credit card you currently have the balance on, and that's usually 3 to 5% of your debt. So it could be a lot depending on the volume, but if it's going to save you a lot of money in the long run, like it is worth the investment, but just pay attention to that. Sometimes there's a limit to how much you can transfer. So again, if you have a high amount of debt, you want to just know how much you can transfer, and that may or may not mean that the balance transfer is still the right option for you. And the last piece to call out is this does require another credit card application, right? You're opening a new line of credit. And if for any reason, you've defaulted on some debt payments and your credit score isn't that strong, you may not be actually able to do this option. So whole host of caveats, but I mean, if you're able to switch from like a 22% APR to a 0% APR, it is so worth it. Just make sure you're using this correctly and you have the right knowledge. I'll pause here if any folks have questions. I don't know if anyone has done a balance transfer and is comfortable sharing, would love to hear. Otherwise, we can move on.
I have done a balance transfer, interestingly. And I have a couple of, I'll talk through kind of my experience with it. I actually got the 0% offer. It was a couple offers, right? Like it was from my current card. A card that I currently had, and they sent an offer for like 0 for such amount of months, and then like 1.9 or 2.9, I can't remember what it was, but for like a longer period. And so I would keep an eye on your mailbox for that, because even though we don't love getting like trash credit card offers in the mail, sometimes if you're interested in doing this like that, I was able to do that without applying for another card, which was really helpful. Nice. But one thing that I would recommend keeping in mind is, in addition to everything that's out here, in my offer, I couldn't actually use that card. And I accidentally made a purchase, and it like kind of messes up the 0% offer. So I was able to get mine corrected, but if the term, be careful to look at the terms of the offer, that if like you make a purchase, you'll see on your statement that there's like cash advance line, balance transfer line, purchase line. And then in the fine print on the back, it says, how they process your payments. And so to make sure that you get the right payments like applied, but I think I would just caution everybody to be careful if you are doing a balance transfer to know whether that's the only thing that could be on that card, because mine was actually an accidental like Starbucks app ish situation. I'd never charged to that card from my Starbucks app. And then of course, like my luck ran out in terms of I just did this and then like it just got messed up because I made a purchase and I wasn't supposed to. So just be careful of that. But otherwise, like Tanvi said, it can be a really nice option. Like in my experience, I was transferring a balance from like a 19% card to 0%. And so, you know, just keep those dates, like mark your dates down and just know that you're, you know, on track to, if not pay it completely off, know what the balance, what the APR will be like whenever it ends.
So Jen, did you get a reduced APR on one of your current cards for a limited amount of time? Is that what it was? Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
so
And they said you couldn't make additional purchases on it. Okay.
right. So, and actually, I should have been prepared for this. I think I have a letter right now. I don't have any balances on any of my cards because of Sequin, but because I paid them off in 2020. Like that was, you know, I had like did this balance transfer, I think in 2019, and then paid everything off in 2020. But my situation was I had a balance on my Discover card, and then I have a card with Bank of America, and they are very annoying to me, but I've had this card forever. And they sent me this balance transfer option. And I was like, okay, well, I really want to get this debt paid off. Like this will save me a lot of money because like I said, I was going from like a 19% APR. And I'm like, okay, if I can just stop paying the interest for a little bit, that'll let me get ahead. But they sent a letter and it had, you know, here's one option, 0% APR. I think it was for like 18 months or something, or that, you know, slightly higher APR for 24 months, probably because they knew that I hadn't used my card. They wanted me to pay them interest after the period. But then, yeah, there was like in the offer, it was like, you know, that was when it told you that if you did make purchases, that it would kind of cancel out the
offer. Yeah, I don't think I've ever gotten an offer on an existing card to lower the APR for a specific amount of time. So that's super interesting. I didn't know they did that. So thank you for sharing, Jen.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah. And I don't know if anyone else has the same, like I said, I've only ever seen that from Bank of America. So I don't know if anyone else has had that experience of getting, you know, a letter in the mail, but it wasn't on the same card that I had the balance. I had like a 0 balance from Bank of America.
Oh,
so like I said, the cynic in me just thinks they were barking up like, oh, well, go and make your balance come over here and then forget the state.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting, right? Because now you see that some of the credit cards, the way they build their product is they want people to transfer their balance to their card. And you know, I don't know, I'm curious how profitable it is, but yeah, some credit cards are built with that in mind, and that's why they have this introductory APR offer.
Yeah.
But yeah, so balance transfers are kind of a way to refinance your credit card debt. And I don't know about you guys, when I realized how simple refinancing is, when you like break it down and try to understand it, I was like, all right, it's not such a scary term. So I just, that was a nice realization for me. And there's also one other option to refinance your credit card debt, or really any type of debt which has a super high interest rate, and that's a personal loan. And the concept is the exact same here. You are subbing out your debt with high interest rate for debt with a lower interest rate. So whereas a balance transfer was a good fit for paying off your debt in the near term, you know, 12 to 15 months, whatever the APR offer is for, a personal loan, like a refinancing your debt through a personal loan, is a better fit if you need a longer time to pay off your debt. So essentially, you want to search for a loan which is going to give you a better interest rate than your current credit card APR, which is not too hard to find, quite honestly. You take the loan out, you pay off your debt in one shot, and then the focus becomes paying off your personal loan and managing your credit card payments and your balance to make sure you're not in that same position again. As with the previous option, there are always some caveats. Number one being, you may have a really low interest rate for your personal loans, but it might come with a lot of fees that end up adding up. So origination fee, early repayment fee, you know, if you go before the repayment date, etc. Some of these I just never heard of before, and it was kind of crazy. So that is one thing to look out for. And the other piece is, before you actually take your loan out, you want to have a gauge of what your monthly budget is. So you should be taking out a loan with a time period with an interest rate that boils down to a monthly payment that you can actually afford. So you just want to do a little bit of math, be intentional, and just like know that you can actually make the loan payments, because otherwise you run into the same issue, you're in debt and you can't pay it off. So I'll pause here if anyone has questions, or if anyone has been in this situation, would love to hear more. And if not, no worries, but this is another option to refinance your credit card debt. Okay. All right. So we talked about some approaches to manage your credit card debt specifically, right? High level, and then some refinancing options. Next, we're going to talk about tips to manage your debt holistically, right? You may have student loans, credit card debt, a mortgage, what have you. And there are two key ways to manage your debt. The first is the debt snowball method, which is paying off your smallest debt first. So the smallest amount. And that feels like a huge win, which then snowballs into additional payoffs. The other approach is the debt avalanche method, where you focus on paying your debt with the highest interest rate first and make minimum payments on all of the other debts. And the goal here is to minimize how much you're paying on interest, and it saves you the most money there. We're going to watch a video after this that goes into a little bit more detail, but one thing I want to call out that we don't often talk about is, as you're paying off debt, you still have to spend money, right? You have to live, you have to buy food. So I just want to call that out. It is so okay to spend money while you're on debt. You obviously want to create a budget and stick to it and plan this out, but you still need to spend, and would suggest using a credit card with your lowest interest rate for this. And if you're not sure you trust yourself, maybe even a debit card, but you know, at Sequin, we don't love debit cards, but we can make an exception if you think it's for your best financial interest.
Can I offer a suggestion?
Yes.
So what I did when I was trying to pay off my cards was I did the debt avalanche method, and I so I set out like all my minimum payments and how much I could afford to pay, and then put any extra money to the most expensive card. But then if I was spending, this is when I started tracking my expenses every week. So my money that I would spend every week, I would also pay that on the card that I charged it on. So like in your example, say you have one card that's like 20% interest, and then you have one card that's 10% interest, and you're charging your like daily expenses, cell phone bill, whatever to that. Like I use that kind of like my debit card. And so then I would say it had like a $40 minimum payment, but I spent $200, I would pay $240 to that card, and then whatever I had to pay to the other card. So it's kind of like a compromise method where you're paying all of your expenses currently, but then all the money that you're spending, you have it like allocated to the right card. So I was still paying my minimum payment on the card plus anything that I charged during that time.
Gotcha. So you're putting money into your highest interest debt. You're paying the minimum on all your credit cards, and whatever spending you're doing, you're paying off the spend as well.
Right.
Okay. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing, Jen.
You're
love that
welcome.
idea as well.
I just thought that mentally that worked for me, as far as like, then I didn't feel like I was making the problem worse, but then I also had that accountability, right, to like stay in my budget instead of just think, oh, well, you know, I'm just putting these expenses, because sometimes, like, depending on what your credit limit is, that can get you in trouble, right? If you're putting $100 of expenses a week on your card and you're trying to pay it off, at some point you're going to run out of credit limit if you're focusing on putting all your money to your other card and you're just like charging up the other one. So
yeah,
thank you for letting me share that, because it's like, it took me a really long time to come up with that method, but it seemed to keep me accountable, but also like keep those balances going down instead of going up.
So I think we need to add a third method, which is the Jen method, next time we do this. And Marley, yes, we love this idea too. And I can totally understand it's really appealing to use your debit card, but we certainly encourage women to use their credit card like their debit card and pay it off every week in small installments so it's manageable. And I love what you said, Jen, of paying off your expenses while following the debt avalanche method. So you're kind of hitting the sweet spot of still building your credit, but still paying off your debt. Awesome. Okay. I'm gonna turn it over to this video so you can hear somebody else's voice for a little bit. And it does a nice job walking through these methods and illustrating them in a little bit more detail.
Strategies for paying down debts.
Can you guys hear it okay?
If you've ever been in debt,
Yeah.
you know it can feel like running on a treadmill. Every month, you pay a little to this loan, a little to that card, and eventually, you feel like you've gotten, well, nowhere. But it doesn't have to be that way. Not if you have a debt repayment strategy in place, one that helps you map out a plan that's realistic enough to follow. Stick to the plan, and before you know it, you'll be moving in the right direction, chipping away at your debt. For this discussion, let's focus on high-interest credit card debt. So let's get started. While there are many ways you can attack your debt, there are two schools of thought in particular that we'll discuss here. The first is commonly referred to as the snowball method. It's when you pay off your debts by balance, the lowest first. Another tried and true method is to pay your debts according to their interest rates, starting with the highest rates first. For this discussion, let's call it the high rate method. So how do these strategies actually work? Let's start with the snowball method. First, make a list of all of your credit card balances from lowest amount to highest. If two balances are similar, prioritize the card with the higher interest rate. When you pay your monthly bills, make the minimum payment due for all of your debts. Then take any additional money you have available and put it toward the debt with the smallest balance. Do this each month until you've paid off your smallest debt. When you pay it off, don't use that account again until your debt is cleared up. Whether you hide the card in a drawer, freeze the card in a block of ice, or close the account, the point is to stop increasing your debt. The next step is to take the money you are paying toward that bill and apply it to the next smallest balance on your list. And as you continue moving down your list, the amount you're able to pay to each balance continues to grow and grow, creating, wait for it, a snowball effect. You might be amazed how quickly that can happen. Now let's talk about the high rate method. Again, make a list of all your debts, but instead arrange them according to their interest rates, with the highest interest rate first. Using this method, you'll also pay the minimum amount due across the board. Then, you'd focus on sending as much as you can afford to the account with the highest interest rate. Keep doing that until it's paid off. Once your balance is zero, concentrate on the card with the next highest rate on your list, and so on. Either of these methods can be a great way to get yourself out of debt, and while both methods have their supporters, it's really up to you to decide what works best. Supporters of the snowball method say that you'll feel a boost each time you pay off an account, and those small victories keep you motivated to reach your goal. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Marketing Research says that the act of closing accounts after they're paid off, regardless of size, is a better predictor of whether you'll get out of debt in the long run. On the other hand, supporters of the high rate method will tell you that over time, you'll save much more money and get out of debt sooner by paying off your higher interest rate debts first. What's right for you? Well, it's a personal choice. But if you want to get out of debt paying as little as possible, it's probably a savvier decision to use the high rate method, because you'll get rid of your most expensive debt sooner and pay less over the long run. But if you're the type of person who has trouble sticking to a plan, or if you need constant motivation, then the snowball method might be a better fit for you. Oh, one more thing. There are some instances where you might not want to go it alone. Like, let's say you're unable to make your minimum payment, or you're having a difficult time making ends meet otherwise. If that's the situation you're in, you might benefit from talking to a certified financial professional. But it's important that you look for one who works for an accredited, nonprofit consumer credit counseling agency and is a member of the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. Whatever you choose to do, the most important thing is that you've decided to get yourself out of debt in the first place. And with some determination, dedication, and a plan, you can get out of debt once and for all. And that's something that you really can't put a price on.
Since you mentioned Bank of America, Jen, this is for you.
Sorry, I said they weren't my favorite. I love you, Bank of America. Thanks for the great artwork.
Cool. So we have one poll, and that's the last poll for this credit power hour. And it's really about whether you've used any of these methods to pay off debt before. Yeah. So if you've used that snowball or the avalanche or both or neither, or just it doesn't apply to you because you've never had debt. Okay, cool. We have one person to, okay. So we have equal splits between debt snowball and debt avalanche. Looks good. Yeah, I think it's all about like what suits you best, and that's something that's really important to know, like what gets the best results for you. So, and well,
Yeah. Okay. So the video mentioned talking to a certified professional. So if you ever find yourself in a position where the debt just feels too much to manage, you need someone with some subject matter expertise and you just need some help, which by the way is totally okay. And I don't know about you guys, but I almost feel embarrassed when I have to ask help for my finances, because to me it's a way I show myself that I'm empowered and independent and intelligent. But I think even more powerful than managing your finances on your own is knowing when to ask for help. And so if you ever find yourself in that position, want to reiterate what the video said, you want to find someone who is NFCC certified, the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, or really just find a nonprofit organization that has debt counselors or like financial planners, because they kind of have your best interests at heart and won't try to get you in even more debt. A couple of other places are the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education, AFCPE. And if you can say that 10 times in a row really quickly, I owe you a drink. You can also look at Spring 4, which gives you some localized resources that can help you with your finances. And they're actually broader than debt management or financial counseling. But yeah, NFCC is the main one that I would recommend looking at. And they also help you with credit report reviews. So if you have been really struggling with refuting something or just don't understand, some of the things in your credit report, they can also help you there. But beyond organizations, there are also some fun and innovative apps that are out there that can help you with your debt. So Coins is one that personally, not a Sequin, just personally, I like. Basically, you tie your debt accounts to this app and it rounds up each of your purchases to the nearest dollar and applies that to your loans. And they charge you a fee every time you do that. So that's how Coins makes money. But it's a kind of a nice automated way for micro savings. There's also Charlie, which I believe Simran's been using, and Charlie's kind of fun. It's this little penguin that connects to your Facebook Messenger app, and it's like an AI technology that asks you questions and helps you make a plan to address your debt and kind of gamifies debt payments. And Simran, anything to add about Charlie?
yes, I was just typing it out, but the texts that Charlie sends are adorable. They're so cute, and they're just really funny. And yeah, it's honestly like it makes me really happy to receive texts from them.
Yeah.
So sign up. This is from Simran, by the way, not Sequin.
Yeah. So and the other point I forgot to mention, so Coins is across different types of debt, but if you want a tool to help you with specifically student debt, there is a comparable app called Snowball. And I don't know about you, but I wonder where they got that name from. Am I right? Oh, sorry, I'm getting confused. I think it's changed for student loans and Snowball is another debt management. So anyways, there are a lot of tools, but I still wonder where Snowball got its name from. Okay, you have another app called Digit, and this is more focused on saving. So it's kind of comparable to Coins. It like rounds up and puts your money in a savings account. So instead of directly paying off your debt, you can use that savings account as the pool you draw from to pay off your debt. And lastly, there's Tally, and Tally kind of helps you with that refinancing. If you have high interest credit card debt, it extends you a line of credit that you can use to make payments at a lower rate. These are all options, and there are like some fun ways to manage it, or some technologies and apps that at least try to make it fun and like a little bit more, like a little bit less emotionally charged and a little bit more intuitive. Simran, go ahead.
Yeah, so one thing about Tally is it has certain conditions, and one of them is that you need a FICO score of at least 660 to qualify for Tally. So that's just like when you're applying. It is a soft pull though, so it won't affect your credit score when they take a look, but just something to know.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're towards the end of our presentation, and the final note we want to leave you on is investing. So we talked about this a little bit last week, and it's going to sound very counterintuitive, but there are actually certain scenarios where you should still invest your money even if you're in debt. Right? Investing feels like this luxury that we should do after we pay off debt, but depending on, the interest rate on your loan, you may actually get more money from investing. So the first thing to note is that, when it comes to your personal finances, the biggest priority, is to build your emergency fund, like have some savings and save for retirement, all of that. But if you find yourself, in a good place with building that for yourself, with putting money away from retirement as you're paying off debt, there may be a case to invest. So fun fact, 7% return is the return you can expect from the market annually. So you think if you're putting your money in like a safe kind of fund that tracks the market, like an ETF, you should be earning about 7% each year. So that means if the interest rate on your loan is under 7%, you'd actually earn more by putting that money into an investment rather than paying off your debt. I'm gonna pause there. Does that make sense? Okay. And if your interest rate is above 7%, you obviously want to pay the debt off and not focus on investing. So, this is always comes down to a personal choice, but I wanted to call this out because at any rate, women should be investing more. And especially when you're in debt and you feel, kind of crushed by all of the responsibilities you have, you may not think this is an option, but it's potentially an option. And it's something certainly to explore as you consider different scenarios. So we just wanted to call that out and put that out there as something for your consideration. And with that, we are at the end. So we'll pause for Q&A or any reactions to this thought about investing, even if you're in debt. And I'll wish you all a happy Thursday. But yeah, any questions or thoughts?
Marley put up a question in the Slack earlier, so I just wanna ask that, if that's cool.
Sure.
And the question is, in terms of increasing your credit score, is it best to just maintain a low credit utilization ratio and just not use your credit card? Or would you recommend using your credit card continuously, which may increase your utilization ratio, but also demonstrate your ability to use credit?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of both. You do want to consistently use your credit card and make payments because that shows you can be trusted, and recurring payments will also positively impact your credit score. At the same time, you don't want your credit utilization to go above 30%. And ideally, if you can keep it within about 10%, that's the sweet spot, and you'll really see your score hopefully jump, at least what we're seeing with other women. So using our Sequin app, we kind of tell you what your credit utilization is, and the goal is to keep it under 30% and to pay it off consistently. And so those two have worked really well for our Sequin women. But the goal is still to use your credit card, and we want you to keep doing that, not necessarily to spend less and spend on your debit card instead. Cool. Well, hope you ladies enjoyed and learned something. I know debt is a loaded topic, but I don't know about you guys. I learned a lot from putting this together with the Sequin girls. And so I think it's super important and something we should all be educated on. If you have any feedback suggestions, let us know. Any thoughts for additional power hours, let us know. Otherwise, we can hang around for a few more minutes, but feel free to go about your Thursday. And thanks so much for joining.
I really enjoyed this. I think I have like a tendency to not invest when I'm in debt because I'm like, my money's going in so many places. How am I supposed to handle that? But it's good to know that, you know, you can do all of it at the same time. You just need a plan.
Yeah, and even if you are able to put a small amount in your investments, it's still going to pay off, right? It's say it's $100. It's $100 you put into your investment or into your debt. It's still $100, but it'll in a year it'll give you more money through the market than the interest you would have accrued. So say you'd get to like 104 in interest over a year, but you would make like 107. So it's a $3 differential, which doesn't feel like much, but heck, it's $3 more than you had before. And I would take that.
Yeah. Oh, also, I actually have a few things to add here, if that's okay. This is kind of like once you've paid off your debt, it's also really important to know how to stay out of debt for the future as well. And what I think is just the first thing is pay yourself first. A technique I like to use is everything goes into my savings account first. And then I take money out of it into my checking account. But the idea is build an emergency fund. That's what's really, really important. Try to have something for at least 6 months. The goal is at least a year. So if an emergency happens, you always have that money to fall back on. So that's tip number one. Another one is, well, this is my favorite tip actually, just keep educating yourself, keep attending Sequin sessions, keep learning. That's what's really important. And yeah, it's just really, really good to know that once you're out of debt, it's really easy to fall back in, because sometimes it's a habit. Like we've discussed earlier, money is very emotional. So it's just good to know how to break that habit and not just fall back into the cycle. Does anyone else have any other tips for staying out of debt that you've used?
I'll just share. It's totally my whole chronic debit card use, which I am trying to learn and get better with. I mentioned in my introduction that because I've used my credit or my debit card for so long, like I had this thin, I didn't know there was such thing as thin credit history. So yeah, like I'm learning that, yeah, to stay out of debt, you could use your debit card, but then you can't gain credit. So it's a pretty interesting balance between the two.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the same thing. Like, oh, you need to have an emergency fund, but also you need to invest. And it's like, okay, what do you want me to do? Can you let me know, please? Like, what are your priorities? And unfortunately, one of the sad things about adulting is no one's going to decide those things for you. You kind of have to know. I think Kimmy, you're very familiar with this. You have a whole podcast about adulthood. So yeah, it just depends on your priorities. Yeah, just like examine what they are, I think, on a regular basis. Don't just inherit what you've inherited from your parents or from people around you and think, oh yeah, this is right. Just always know yourself and what's going to work for you.
Yeah, I would add, look at the option that is like objectively going to give you more wealth or more money. I think when I think about my personal priorities or like what I am comfortable with, that is not necessarily the framework that I'm like going with. And I think that is the shift we need to do of like, yes, investing is scary and unpredictable. And actually that is a point to add, is that there is additional risk involved in investment. So like, yes, you get a higher return, but that's why. So I guess it comes down to that as well. But like, yeah. So another way to think about it is to say like, what's going to give me the most money, like what's going to give me the most wealth, and like we're going to go backwards from there. And so if you are in debt and you're like thinking about investing, like I would highly suggest like safe investments. Like don't go anything risky like buying airline stocks or something like that. And you know, that's a whole other conversation of like, okay, you decided you wanted to invest, like let's talk about what you actually invest in. The goal here was just to get you thinking. You have to manage your finances holistically. It's a lot to think about, but just weigh the pros and cons and the opportunity cost, and at least like consider it, because women at all already just like don't invest enough. I have to say though, I recently bought some airline stock and I was like, dang, I should have bought in like 2020 when it was so low, because they've gone up. Not that I endorse it, just it's okay. If I lose that money, I'm not going to be happy, but it's going to be okay.
I mean, GameStop stock, that was apparently a thing.
Yeah.
For like a week. Yeah. So much was going on in 2020. It was a great year.
Yeah. All right, cool, ladies. Well, thank you all so much for your time. Happy Thursday, and we will see you all next week.
See ya.
Bye.